everyone, welcome back to Revolve Commercial. I'm Sam and I'm sitting here today with the Master of Commercial Real Estate Strategy, Mish. Mish, how are you doing today?
Hey Sam, fantastic day. Always excited about rolling out education and talking about education. It's been quite a testing time for a while, but we're officially breaking it down in a brand new multi-part series of education.
Yes, so excited. So this is episode 2 in the 7-part series. Last week we talked about goal setting and really understanding where you're starting. Today we're going to be talking about a few different things, which Mish will share in a minute. But if you've been sitting on the fence about commercial property because it feels a little bit like a closed door club, or like you don't really know what's going on, you don't know where to get the information, this is your invitation to join Mish. So before we dive into the actual foundations of this series, why do people need to stop and actually get educated in commercial real estate before diving in? Why can't they just look up listings, decide what they like the look of, and just sort of go like they do with residential, Mish?
I'm going to laugh about that, Sam. I think a lot of people do just do that, and I think that's exactly what hurts them, what burns them. So diving into commercial without education is a little bit like jumping out of a plane without a parachute. Seriously, I mean, it really is high risk doing that kind of thing. Residential's simple. Residential, you take 2 steps, knock on the door, and you're in. If you're buying a dud house, you might lose a little bit of capital growth. You can knock it down, you can renovate it, you can do quite a lot to it. But in commercial, it's the huge mistakes that you make around leases, around zones, about structural, about compliance. There's so much litigation, there's so much legal documentation that you need to understand when buying a commercial property. It can literally bankrupt you if you are making the incorrect purchase and not doing the right due diligence on it. It's a completely different beast. It's bricks and mortar with a roof over the head, but it operates on strict legalities, corporate structures, mathematical calculations. But here's the good news.
Oh, glad there's good news. It was sounding very dark there for a minute.
Yeah, we were going down a bit of a rabbit hole. Hey,
Yeah.
once you understand the game, it unlocks wealth. It unlocks high yields. It can unlock a true set and forget passive income. And all you need is a roadmap, really. And that's exactly why we built this education platform. A lot of people speak to me about it now. We say, get educated, and the more we can give you in education, it would create a roadmap for your success without you having to do this work.
My background's business. It's all around knowing your KPIs, your key performance indicators. And so this is the same thing, right? It's really, instead of being worried or fearful or not knowing what to do next, really it's about the data, and that's what I'm getting from you in all of these episodes. So today we're going to be covering property titles, specifically freehold versus strata, and you're going to be sharing around leasehold and crown land. So why don't we just jump straight in, Mish, and get into the part that you love, the education. Most people think that freehold means that you own everything, which kind of to me makes sense, right? But I believe that's not the case, but I guess you're going to tell us. Where does that assumption leave people like me that have thought that? Where does that assumption actually get buyers into trouble?
Okay, it's quite a huge topic, and I don't think we can really cover off everything, on one little podcast. But freehold Torrance title is exclusive rights, but watch out for the government encumbrances. So, in other words, what you're buying is the surface only. When you purchase a property, realistically, you're only purchasing 1 meter deep of that property. Everything under, and that goes for residential as well, incidentally.
Okay.
Everything underneath that belongs to the Crown. So anything that's under your property is owned by the Crown. So if they discover gold under your property, poof, your house is going to turn into a gold mine.
Wow, I had no idea.
Well, that's the positive way of looking at it. But realistically, so freehold is you're purchasing the property and you're purchasing the land that it's on, but just bearing in mind you're only purchasing 1 meter deep of land. And that goes for everything. You can't get away from that.
So, well, can you go a little bit deeper into that surface only rule? You know, the Crown owns what's underneath.
Yes.
What does that mean in practice, and how do government encumbrances actually show up on a title?
Okay, so you've got very many different types of titles, and when you're purchasing a property, you're going to be purchasing the property and the title. So you become the title holder on that property, which means that that block of land, essentially, you're the title holder of that block of land, okay? There are different ways of owning that title. So freehold would mean that you own it outright. You can go into group titles. You can go to strata titles. So you can be purchasing where you're actually purchasing a portion of. So if you're purchasing in a high-rise building, you'd be purchasing into a strata title where you're purchasing a hole in the wall. Realistically, because you're buying in a strata title, which is a group title, and you're purchasing something that is above the ground, far above the ground. So same be said for industrial. If you're purchasing in strata, yes, you are purchasing. If you're on ground level, it's still strata, and the strata literally owns and is responsible for that building. You still pay for it. You're buying it, and you're buying the ability to lease it. Whether you're leasing it to yourself, your own entity, or leasing it out, and that's where you, deriving your income from, let's say.
Yep. So obviously strata is where things can get a little bit more complicated, because obviously we're under a body corporate. What does the body corporate actually control? And in regards to, I know you haven't even brought this up, but sinking fund, what's the one thing about a sinking fund that every buyer should check before they sign?
Okay. Great question, Sam. Really great question. So yes, when you're buying in a strata, you become part of that strata. So in other words, if you're one of 10, you're 1/10 of that strata, and you become responsible for 1/10 of the outgoings, of the expenses, of the maintenance, of the make good, of everything within that building. Now, this is something that most people don't know, is when you're buying in a strata, actually, the strata essentially is responsible, like I said, for the building and everything that goes on the building. So everything that the builder built, the strata is responsible for. And I'm bringing this up under body corporate. So the body corporate basically manages that strata. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is often what happens in these body corporates is you have to really understand the fine print of what you are responsible for and what the body corporate is responsible for. So you can get title deeds that where you're purchasing a property in a body corporate. However, in your body corporate deeds, you would be responsible for your roof, or you're responsible for your dividing wall. So in other words, you are it's called joint in common. So in other words, one wall that divides two properties, you are jointly and commonly responsible for that wall. So in other words, if your neighbor punches a hole through the wall, your neighbor has to fix that, but it becomes your problem as well. And if your roof is leaking, the body corporate is not going to do that roof because you haven't bought 100% body corporate property. So your body corporate deeds are very, very important that you understand what the body corporate is responsible for. In the event where body corporate is responsible for everything, if you have a leak, if you have gutter breakdowns, if you have neighboring problems, you can take that to body corporate. All right. You can actually sit on the council. You can sit on the body corporate as a member. And I would always advise that you attend your body corporate meeting so that you know what's going on. It's quite a responsibility. You need to know what everybody's doing, what they're doing, and what the upcoming expenses are. Now, we spoke about sinking fund. So you get an administration fund, which basically runs the body corporate, and then you get a sinking fund, which I like to call capital expenses. So sinking fund, new name for that is capital expenses, which explains it a little bit better. And
Yeah, it
capital
does.
expenses is if there's anything that needs to be done, for instance, roof repairs, paint work, driveway repairs, common property, gardens to be done, that all comes out of your capital expenses. So heed caution, particularly in large body corporates. Your finances when purchasing a property in body corporate, make sure that you look at the fine print and see what the past works have been, how much they've cost, and what the future planned works are. Because I think this is where a lot of people get caught out, is you'll buy in body corporate and you say, oh, it looks good, and their body corporate fees are pretty low. And then when you check it out, you find out that they're coming up for resurfacing, for re-roofing, all of that. That's going to cost a fortune. And any buildings with lifts in, escalators, moving parts, huge air cons, are they responsible for it or are you responsible for it? So there's a huge amount of information that goes into that. And in fact, we have specialists that we suggest you use when buying body corporates who go in and do all of that information for you.
Good idea.
That was a little bit of an ear bender, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's really important to know, because I was just at a property a couple of weeks ago, and it was under a strata. And I sort of pricked up my ear because someone said, hang on a minute, like, why are we putting that much in, like, coming up? And it was, there was something in the contract that he'd picked up, and it was that there wasn't enough in the sinking fund, and that they're going to be having to redo all the balconies on, like, it was a multi-story block.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, lucky, not lucky he asked it. Of course, it's good that he asked it, but
Yes.
other people could have potentially missed that, and then that's coming out of cash flow down the track.
Absolutely. It's coming out of your pocket. So if you see anything that says special levies, that is coming out of your pocket. So you could pay special levies for the next 5 years, and which could be for repairing balconies. And bearing in mind that if it's an older building, within 5 years, the next thing needs to be done. Maybe it's the roof or the escalator, and they're going to bring those special levies back in again. So definitely look out for that, because special levies can sometimes be as much as the levies that you're actually paying, your strata fees in some cases.
So let's imagine that in this scenario that he hadn't noticed that, and someone's already bought in, so maybe he's already bought in, discovered that the sinking fund is underfunded. What would happen next? How do they protect themselves, like, before they've even got in that position, I guess?
Sam, once you've signed that document and you've taken possession of that property, you're in. There's nothing you can do, okay? You're absolute hook, line, and sinker. You are now the title owner, and sinking fund's going to come knocking on your door. You're going to get your invoices, your accounts, and you are liable for whatever it was. So again, most important is to do deep dive due diligence on your strata titles, administration, and sinking fund. I'll tell you a little story, actually.
Oh, perfect. I like your stories. They're the good bits.
Makes me think of a property that we looked at probably about a year or two ago. we were looking, I think there were about 60 units in an industrial complex, and price was pretty good. It wasn't too bad. But I noticed that quite a couple of the tenants and or owners were selling. So red flag. If you see that, red flag, okay? And this is definitely something that the agent is never going to tell you about. So you have to go and do your homework. And when we looked at the sinking fund, we noticed that there was a $93,000 negative. So we went and questioned it, and long story short, this was for a client of mine. She actually brought the property to me and asked me, and she said, she was all excited. She wanted to buy the property. When I looked at that, I said to her, did you see the 93,000? She said, yeah, but I don't think it really matters. And I said to her, well, I think it does matter.
So it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Somewhere. And I said to her, you're going to be liable for that. So divide that by 60 and decide whether you're prepared to pay extra for that. And she went, whoa. Anyway, and true as nuts, the previous administrators or body corporate had not managed the property correctly. They had gone into debt, and that's why everybody was selling. So any little negatives that you see on any statements, red flag.
Yeah.
Don't buy. Move away.
Now, at the end of this episode, we're going to share more about how to get some due diligence templates so that you can audit those strata records, but we're going to leave that to the end. Mish, let's move on to leasehold and crown land. You can profit, or I've been told you can profit from a lease without ever owning the land underneath it. So how would you explain that to someone who's only ever thought in terms of actually owning the dirt, like the actual land that something's sitting on?
Well, again, Sam, this is the biggest misconception, because when you're buying property, like I said, you're only buying a meter of the dirt. So here's another opportunity, basically. And the concept is that you are purchasing the building that's on top of the land, and you're leasing this from, let's say, the Crown. All right. Now, you never get to own that land, or you probably do at some stage, but I mean, a lot of them are on 99-year leases, and or over a period of time. If you're buying one after a couple of years, maybe it's at 83 years lease or something, which is still doable. So you don't actually ever own the land. So what happens with a leasehold is generally you get a higher rent, and generally you can achieve a higher yield. And that generally covers the lease itself and the land, which means that your tenant effectively is paying for two leases, or when you're purchasing it, you're purchasing two leases. So you're purchasing a lease to the, let's say, the government or the Crown, and the Crown owns that land. For argument's sake, we'll take Airports Company. They own a lot of the land around Airports Company. There's a lot of industrial units down there. And when you purchase those properties, you're purchasing two leases. So bearing in mind, there's pros and cons. The pro is you generally get a higher rental out of them because they're close to the airport. They're on main roads. They're close to all the infrastructure. The disadvantage is that legally, you're going to go through two lease assessments, which means that your legal fees are slightly higher, slightly longer, and you're dealing with the Crown, which is sometimes a little bit of a painful experience.
Yeah, I would imagine.
But if it's a great deal, it's worth it. If you're getting a good lease, if you've got good tenants in there, always worth it.
All right, so walk us through the time frames. How does a 99-year government lease compare to a private 25 to 30-year leasehold?
Okay, so again, pros and cons. 99-year government lease functions very similarly to a freehold or ownership in practice. Because the time spans multiple generations, it provides a long, massable, sustainable security make it highly attractive to investors. So the longer your leasehold, you know that you're going to have that property there for multi-generations, or you're going to have it for that long period. So generally large corporations like these type of properties, like I mentioned, close to airport, you'll see a lot of huge institutions, huge properties, or corporations that lease those, and major lenders don't mind. So it's good.
I'm guessing there's a little bit more certainty there with
Yes.
that longer time frame.
Yeah. So, and you can regard it as any other property, because if you're going to hold that property for 20 odd years, let's say you bought a 99-year lease and you own it for 20 years, you're still selling it, with a 78
Plenty
years
of time
on
left.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's plenty time. I guess the closer you get to the shorter leasehold is where you need to be asking more questions and doing due diligence. We had one in Harvey Bay, which had remaining, it was a harbour property close to the harbour, and I think it had about, if I remember correctly, about 2.5 years left on it, and it was a 50-year leasehold. It just means that we had to do more due diligence with the Crown, with State, with the department that actually held that lease. So it's a lot more work. And they won't give you a definitive answer as to whether they're going to honor that lease or not. So here's the risk, right? Let's say you purchase that property and you've purchased the property on top of the land. They own the land. And in 2 years' time, they decide, no, they are going to build a distribution warehouse or whatever they need there. And they would want you to terminate that. Well, they can terminate their lease with you. Now, you've got a building there and you've got a tenant in your building. You own that building. But now suddenly, it's not as if you can lift the building and move it to another piece of land. So you have a fundamental problem. And you need to honor that either which way. So do all your homework before. This one that I was talking about in particular, the tenant was only prepared to sign the lease, which is pretty expectable for the period of the leasehold. So it was a 2-year lease. And then at the end of that, it would be renegotiated. The advantage of that is that they paid a higher rent. We paid a lower price for that property. So we dropped it by about 10%. Tenant was still prepared to pay it, and that's a risk that you take.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if someone's evaluating a leasehold asset, how much weight does the remaining lease carry versus likelihood of renewal? Like, what should make someone pause, especially, I guess, in like foreshore or airport development?
Well, absolutely. Again, run your numbers, do due diligence, ask the right questions, go to the correct departments, and it really is a valuation strategy, factoring the remaining lease or the renewal, especially foreshores, airport developments. There's massive risk when you're doing those. So you really need to go to what's going into town planning, what's going into future planning in those areas. And generally, those, like harbors, foreshores, airports, that kind of stuff is going to be planned 20, 30 years in advance, depending on whether we go through a change of government. Did I just say that?
Well, it's something to really pay attention to now, right?
It certainly is. Look, generally those kind of plans, if they do start planning that, then they do go through ultimately. But be aware that it is a risk. The take up of land for, like I said, it's a further expansion. And it's your opportunity to negotiate a lower, high risk, lower price. It's a seesaw. So, and it's up to the individual as to, whether you're going to do something like that or not.
Yeah. So when you were talking about the government and the legislation, Does it change much state to state? So I'm in New South Wales. If I was looking at something up in your neck of the woods, up in Queensland, like, is it going to be very different?
Hell yes, absolutely. As somebody said to me the other day, when you live in Australia, consider yourself as just living in a different country per state.
Okay.
The legislation is so different. So yes, absolutely. It's my job to familiarize myself with all of the legislation, and it's your job if you're purchasing by yourself. Then you need to know the legislation, go and do the deep dive, go and do the due diligence, find out, speak to people, and find out everything that you need to know from state to state, or in a particular state if you're purchasing a property in a particular state. It's and that's exactly why we've developed the Fast Track Commercial Education series. We don't just tell you what questions to ask. We hand you the exact due diligence, the templates, so that you can evaluate strata records line by line, so that you're never relying on gut feel, and don't listen to agents, because really agents are there to sell the property.
Totally.
They're not going to give you the reassurance that you need to know. Go and do your own work. And whether that's on sinking funds or whatever it is, find out what the health of all your documentations are, of all your funds are.
So important. All right, so today was the second episode in this 7-part series. I think that this series is an absolute game changer for anyone, I guess, that wants to build their wealth in commercial real estate. But Mish, what I'd love you to do is give us one immediate actionable step that we could take tomorrow if we were wanting to move forward in commercial real estate.
Well, just go ahead and click on the links and go to Revolve Commercial. But before you do that, just try this out, okay? Tomorrow morning, pick a commercial property, anything, something. Go online and check out a commercial property. And before you look at the building, the price, the pretty pictures, go straight to the local council's website and look up the zoning portal, all right? So pick a property, go and have a look. Local council, zoning portal, and ensure that the property's current use legally matches that zone. All right, because they'll mention it probably on the advert. If the tenant's business doesn't legally match that zone, walk away. It's that simple. It's a tiny step to start with, but because that is compliance, and you don't want to get caught in that net trap.
Smart. Mish, as always, this has been gold. I know that everything that you covered today is exactly why you built the Fast Track Commercial Education platform, which you just mentioned. But before we finish up, can you just explain a little bit about who the program's for and why would they want to join?
Look, I think anybody who's interested in learning or wanting to purchase commercial property at this stage, maybe you've come out of residential, maybe you've always wanted to know, maybe you want to expand your portfolio. This is for anybody who has never bought commercial property before, and or people who own commercial property and have a lot of questions about this kind of thing. This would be the perfect platform for you. We give you the A to Z of everything in this commercial program. We offer 2 basic programs. The one is the commercial property fast track commercial education platform by itself. And or if you want to further your education, then you can join the mentoring group where we do lives. We go into deep dives. We have Q&A sessions, and you have one-on-one sessions with myself and my team if required. So there's one of those 2, but most definitely if you've ever wanted to know about commercial real estate, this is the place to find it.
Love it. So you can go to revolvecommercial.com.au, which is also linked in the show notes below. And Mish, next week you are going to talk to us and educate us on office spaces and retail versus industrial warehouses. So I'm really looking forward to that. And thanks again for sharing what you shared today. And thank you for listening to this episode of Revolve Commercial.
Thanks, Anne, as ever. Thank you for being my co-host and helping the listeners get more educated.